Okay, I had some technical bugs to work out before I started the video. Every shirt I put on reflected some of the background, so finally put one on that. I think I've worn this one already, but uh, it's not reflecting the background as bad. But actually, the background scene you see there is a reenactment we had at the Tallahassee Museum, Big Cypress Reservation. That's photos from 1999. And uh, yeah. Oh, there I am. Yep, right up there. So, okay, 20 years ago. So I'm going to talk about books on the Black Seminoles, the also called Maroons, Freedmen, and to start out with, there are a lot of books on the subject. Unfortunately, many of them are not researched all that well. Um, they use, I guess, faulty sources. And I'll talk about one of them in that. When I look for a really good book, I look for one that uses primary sources, firsthand accounts, eyewitness accounts. And take, for example, this one, Barracoon by Zora Neale Hurston. This is a primary source or firsthand account because this is actual interview of Cujo Lewis, who was taken, captured as a slave in West Africa, and brought to Alabama. The last slave ship to arrive in Alabama is 1859, I believe. Anyway, it's his story, and Zora Neale Hurston interviewed him in the early 30s. And it came out about 2 years ago, but I highly recommend it. It's really good. That's an example of primary source. Now, when people talk about the Black Seminoles, one thing they look at first is this book by Joshua Giddings, written in 1858, The Exiles of Florida. The problem is this, is it's poorly researched. He ignores research and evidence, and he's making a point, which sometimes he, evidence be damned on that. For example, he quotes one source on Dade's battle, but you go back to that source and it's not even in there. Another time he makes a major point and he bases it on a footnote from a speech in Congress with no evidence to back it up whatsoever. So and so a lot of it's on hearsay. He never came to Florida and he never visited Florida. So he's writing it all from Washington. And unfortunately, it's a very poor book. Now, one that came out quite a while back, it was rewritten in, it says 1985, 86, 5 years after the author passed away of the original text. The Black Seminoles by Kenneth Porter. He did a lot of really good articles for the Florida Historical Quarterly or the Florida Anthropologist, and that's where you can find a lot of good articles. So he was an author there in the early days. The problem is a lot of the information stated. It does go very good into the history of the Black Seminoles going out to Oklahoma and the Buffalo Soldiers there. And my next book is a really good one about that as well. Our Land Before We Died by Jeff Guinn. And I think I might have picked this one out up in Oklahoma, I'm not sure. But it's about the Black Seminoles. It's, pretty good. It's well researched, footnoted very well, and it covers a lot of information and territory once they go out west. Another one that I found out is really good, Daniel Littlefield, Africans and Seminoles from Removal to Emancipation. Really good, well researched, lots of good footnotes. And in the appendix, it has, I'm not sure if it's, oh, you can see some of there. It has the list of names of the slaves that were taken by General Jessup and General Taylor gives them by name, their age. Uh, some have the physical description, and some have who their owner is supposedly being. Like there's one, it's pages, it's all Micanopy, or half of the page here is Billy Bowlegs. And, you know, they don't want to acknowledge that they might be free people there. So I think the appendix is actually worth the price of the book on the Black Seminoles, Africans and Seminoles. But I guess it'd be more Maroons and Black Seminoles than anything else. And this is a good book I picked up, very comprehensive. Florida's Negro War, Black Seminoles, and the Second Seminole War by Anthony Dixon. Has Abraham on the cover. Neat thing about that is he went to FAMU here in Tallahassee, so he's probably actually been to Prospect Bluff Negro Fort. It's jam-packed full of information, but I was surprised that it's only 150 pages long, and it's not footnoted, and there's no index. But it has good sources of bibliography that's really sound. But I just wish it was footnoted. But it is a really good book. If you want a book that's you can read really quick and just get caught up real to speed, then I would suggest this one. Now let's go to some fiction. Seminole Freedmen by Doug Alderson. Of course, on front, he has a picture of a white reenactor, not a Seminole freedman. In fact, I know who that guy is. But anyway, Doug Alderson, he's a great author. He does a lot of books on Florida environment, went on the Kissimmee River. And it's a novel, it says, in 1815, 11-year-old Jenny and her mother Annie work as field slaves in southern Alabama, and they escape with the help of Cato, another young runaway, and go to the Apalachicola River. It says to abandon but fully fortified British fort. Well, if it's Negro Fort Prospect Bluff, it really wasn't abandoned at that time. The only time it was abandoned was after it was destroyed, before it was turned into Fort Gadsden. And that was a U.S. fort from 1818 to 1821, when Florida became a U.S. territory. So Fort Gadsden's actually the first place in Florida that raised the United States flag and remained U.S. territory ever after 3 years before Florida actually became a U.S. territory. And this is a really fun book. I found this recently and had to get a copy. It's Obie, Seminole Maroon Freedom Fighter, Obie. And that's my friend Matt on the front, Smokey. The horse's name is Smokey, and unfortunately he passed away. He was 33 years old, which I guess is sort of a good age for a horse. But, you know, these are people I know that are kind of highlighted in the book, which always makes it fun. And it's a children's book about Obie, a Black Seminole, escaping from the war and becoming a free man. And it has some really good artwork inside. Let me see if I can find some of it. Oh, here's some. Here's Elder Obie telling his story to the children there. I love that. And love this even more is one of my friends, John Griffin. That's John, picture of John. I went to his funeral about a year and a half ago in January 2019. A very sad loss. He was a very intelligent conversationalist, and he was from the city of Groveland. If you ever heard of, I think it's the Groveland Four, who the state finally acquitted them of crimes they didn't commit. 4 black men who were killed in the 1950s for crimes they didn't commit. Anyway, John was from the same town. I asked him, what do you think when all that was going on? he says, we're tough, we're Griffins, nobody's going to chase us out of town. And I like that answer, especially because he was a wealth of knowledge of the history of the area and he knew about that particular interest. John started doing the living history as a Black Seminole, and he got his nephew, Matt, involved. Matt's much older now. I'll say he's 25. I don't know. I've known him since he's been about 10. But I really enjoy this book because it's people I know and it's written by people who know John and Matt and kind of fictionalize the story of a Black Seminole. It's sort of based on them. Those are books on the Black Seminoles, and I'll have it in the description. And a few more things I want to add since this video is shorter than some of the others. A few books that I forgot in my last video on archaeology, Seminole War Archaeology. There's a couple good books. These are just two of them, like Beads on a String by Brent Weissman. This was printed in the 1980s. Tells about finding Osceola's secret hideout in the Cove of Littlefield, which Dr. Weissman excavated it in the 1980s. It was on a scout camp at the time. I think the property is now Water Management District in Swiftmud, and that's Southwest Florida Water Management District, if anybody wonders. And he wrote an updated version, Unconquered People, Florida Seminole and Miccosukee Indians, about the archaeology and the culture. Goes beyond the Seminole War, of course, but also a really good book. I forgot to mention those two in my last video. But if you're interested in looking up those books, I think most of these are unfortunately out of print, but I'm going to leave them in the description so you can search for them on Amazon or some of the third-hand booksellers, or get a copy. And hopefully this will get you a lot of really good reading material, and hopefully talk to you later.